Hello, Tom Maguire. So, just a quick review on the book False Alarm: How Climate Change Panic Costs Us Trillions, Hurts the Poor, and Fails to Fix the Planet by Bjorn Lomborg. Now, I discovered this book in an interview between Jordan Peterson and Bjorn Lomborg, which happened, I don't know, only a few weeks ago now. I was listening to it in the car on the way to work the other day. Very interesting. Anyone who follows this channel, looks at my book reviews, will realise that I've read a few books recently on global warming. I've read David Attenborough's latest one, A Life on Our Planet. Also read How to Avoid a Climate Disaster by Bill Gates. Both really good books. I've read other stuff in the past as well around global warming. But I went for this one because I wanted a little bit of balance. I don't like to be too one-sided with these things. I like to try and get a proper overview of different people's opinions. I'm very aware, as I'm sure you all are as well, that there's a very strong cultural push nowadays that global warming is a massive problem. We should all be doing whatever we can to fix it. We should all take it very seriously. If you listen to the media, we should be terrified the world is about to come to an end. And I'm not saying any of that stuff isn't true. I fully believe that global warming is a real threat. It concerns me, it worries me. But there are people out there who contest it to a certain extent. And I'm not the sort of person who's just going to be satisfied with being arrogant and just saying that those people are stupid and uneducated. Actually, people have opinions for a reason. There's often, if not always, two sides to every story. And I just want to kind of educate myself and understand why those views are there. I want to try and get as genuine and authentic an opinion as I possibly can, which isn't always easy to do. We know that the media feeds us stuff. It isn't completely honest. It is biased for whatever reason, for lots of different reasons. So it's down to us to try and seek the truth in the best way we possibly can. And that is one thing that YouTube is really good for, isn't it? We are able to speak, talk about things, discuss things as openly and honestly as possible without bureaucracy, red tape. I've got no one telling me what I can say, what I can't say. I might regret it in a few years when I say something that, I change my mind about potentially, but I can be honest with you. I can just tell you how I see it, and you can agree or disagree, and that's absolutely fine. But this book isn't necessarily about disagreeing with global warming, and I've seen some reviews that kind of talk about Bjorn Lomborg as they call him a lukewarmer, which I find a bit patronising. I think, just because he's got a different opinion, he's presenting things in a different way, to call him a lukewarmer, I just sort of think is a little bit, again, like I say, patronising, really. He has done a lot of research. He's drawn from a lot of very highly considered research, I suppose. So there are two main sources that he's drawn on from the book: the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that's the IPCC, and the US National Climate Assessment. Apparently the models he uses were developed by Professor William Nordhaus of Yale University, who in 2018 became the only climate economist to ever be awarded the Nobel Prize in economics. So I think it's fair to say that the sources he's drawn on are pretty difficult to argue with, really. And he just basically makes the point that, yes, global warming is a problem. Yes, it's something we need to fix. But is it necessarily the immediate emergency situation that we're being told? And do we therefore need to be spending trillions of dollars, pounds, whatever, on fixing it, when actually there are plenty of problems in the world that could be fixed with much less money, which could help lift people out of poverty, which would then put them in a position where they care more about global warming, where they can afford to put more money into fighting global warming, beating global warming. And it's just I think it was quite a compelling argument. I'm not saying that I suddenly disagree with global warming, not that that really makes sense, but I'm not saying I'm suddenly on the side of the people who talk against acting very quickly. I still think, based on all the evidence, that it is a very real threat. But I think it makes sense that we could potentially be fooled into spending far too much money on making a very tiny positive impact on global warming, a very tiny positive impact on saving the planet, which may not even necessarily save the planet, at the expense of hundreds of thousands, millions of, possibly even billions of other lives from loss of other things. And actually, global warming and improving the technologies and things for global warming tends to hit poorest people the hardest. The poorest countries are the countries that rely on farming. These people are hit hardest by floods, droughts, not having proper systems in place. And the other point he makes is that when people talk about, I can't remember exactly the people, but when people talk about the problem, the potential threat to human life through global warming, they're not considering human beings' ability to adapt and change. They're not considering innovation by improving things. And actually, a lot of the statistics come from, how places would flood if nothing actually improved. Well, actually, the chances are those things are going to improve to a certain extent. So it's very interesting. So just a few kind of statistics, I suppose, that he draws on. So in the 1920s, climate-related disasters killed almost 500,000 people each year. Today, that number's lower than 20,000. Apparently, this effect isn't only seen in the developed world. From 1970 to 2000, about 15,000 people died in Bangladesh each year because of hurricanes. Since 2010, thanks to adaptation, the average number is 12. So he's just giving us the bigger picture of how he's kind of talking in a way that kind of Hans Rosling and people do in terms of, their book Factfulness, where they're talking about life is actually so much better than we think it is. We're told all the time by media how terrible things are. The media tell us how scary climate change is, how we should be terrified for our lives, for our children's lives and things. And they may well have a point, but we do have to take what the media say with a certain pinch of salt to a certain extent. So he's just trying to give us the whole picture, and the whole way through he's saying it is a problem, we do have to deal with it, but let's have a look at it properly. How is it best to spend money? We don't spend enough money on tuberculosis, which is one of the biggest killers of people across the world. It's been eradicated in rich countries, but in poorer countries it's still a massive killer. It leaves children without parents because it often gets people later on in life. And if just a relatively small amount of money was spent on that, we could save so many kids from losing their parents and becoming orphans. We can make a huge difference. And that's something that Bill Gates has invested in. He's invested in tuberculosis. And I think he was quoted as saying it was the best investment that he ever made. But it's not just tuberculosis. There's loads of stuff. He's talking about the money it costs for green energy, wind farms and things, how ineffective they are, how expensive they are. When actually that money could be spent somewhere else. The money could be spent, he also says, on R&D, research and development as well. And he reckons that'll make a huge difference. If we spent more money on research and development, we would get to the bottom of what it is we need to do far more quickly. And that would be far more likely to make a huge difference. Geoengineering, which is something that some people aren't very happy about, but actually, more money spent on R&D into geoengineering could make a massive difference potentially. I think he mentions nuclear power as well, which we've talked about before. If you don't want to read the book, then look at the Jordan Peterson interview that he does. That's really interesting. It's only about an hour and a half, hour 50 minutes, I think, like most of those interviews. And that kind of sums the book up for me, really. I have to say it wasn't my favourite book. It is an academic book, and I'm not an academic as much as I might sort of come across like I'm pretending to be sometimes, but I'm certainly not. So I did find it a little bit dry in places. There's a lot of statistics, and when I'm listening to these statistics, I often find myself thinking, yeah, but I'm sure the other side have got another argument. They've got another box of tricks that they can draw from if they want to kind of counter argue that. So I didn't find it completely 100% convincing, but then I don't find the other argument 100% convincing either. It just gave me the opportunity to open my mind a little bit, look at it from the other side, and some people are so kind of happy to, or so concerned with virtue signaling, aren't they? They want people to see them as doing the right thing all the time. I'm an environmentalist, I do my recycling. I've got a friend who puts half a bag of rubbish out every week, and we must put up about 4 or 6 bags. Absolutely ridiculous. And they're so kind of like high and mighty about it, and you just think, do you really know exactly what you're talking about? I'm not convinced you necessarily do. It's great. We all have to start individually to take responsibility to make a difference. But actually, when you look at it, the difference that we each make on our own is so tiny, it just isn't going to have an effect quickly enough to save the world. So money needs to be spent in the right places. We can't just kind of say the rich nations want these things done, so we're going to put trillions into it. We have to help the rest of the world. We have to help people who are struggling in other countries, get them out of poverty, get them into a better position, spend more money into research and development, innovation, trust the fact that as human beings we are innovative and inventive, and we have come up with solutions time and time again in history. and we hopefully will do again. I don't assume that we will do, because I think that'd be foolish, but we hopefully will do. And it's just very interesting just to see that other argument. And I just think there are too many people out there who want to just scream from one end or the other. You know, I'm an environmentalist. If you don't agree, you're a Trump supporting ignorant fool. And I just think that's a really bad way of looking at things. And this is a personal development channel. I'm always trying to improve myself. I'm always trying to help you improve yourself. And the only way we can do that, really, or one of the best ways we can do that, is to open our minds, to learn, to read, to listen, to be open-minded, to be curious. So that's what this book is good for. You know, it's not, like I say, it's not an amazing book or anything by any stretch, but it's definitely worth a listen or a read if you want to kind of get a better idea of what is actually happening out there when it comes to global warming. So as usual, thanks very much. Please keep liking and subscribing, and I will speak again very soon. Cheers.